Hi, I'm Jasmine, here today to discuss with you why people understand patterns but still repeat them. Have you ever caught yourself saying, I know better, so why do I keep doing this? Maybe you understand exactly why you procrastinate, or maybe you understand why you always overthink. Maybe you've read books, listened to podcasts, gone to therapy, watched videos, and spent years trying to understand a particular habit or behavior. And yet somehow you find yourself repeating the same pattern over and over and over again. Well, if that's happened to you, you're not alone. One of the biggest misconceptions people have about personal growth is that understanding a problem or a pattern should automatically solve it. But understanding a pattern and changing a pattern are two very entirely different things. Today, I want to explore why that happens and what it has to do with hypnosis. Many of the things we do every day happen automatically. You don't consciously think about every step involved with brushing your teeth. You don't consciously think about every turn you make when driving a familiar route. The brain becomes efficient. It learns patterns. The subconscious mind learns through repetition, experience, and association. The more often something happens, the more familiar it becomes to the mind. And familiarity has power. Over time, certain responses begin running automatically in the background of your mind. You don't stop and decide how to react. You simply react. Think about your shoes. Most people don't stop and consciously think through every step. You don't have to analyze how to make that loop, wrap the lace, or pull the knot tight. You can probably have a conversation while you're doing that, come to think of it. You've done it so many times that the process runs automatically. In many ways, our everyday thinking works the same way. Over time, we develop automatic mental and emotional habits through repetition and experience. Certain thoughts, reactions, and behaviors begin running in the background without requiring conscious effort. The subconscious mind doesn't necessarily evaluate whether a habit is helpful, enjoyable, or productive. Its primary job is to run the programs that have been learned and reinforced over time. In that sense, it's a bit like computer software. Once a program is installed and repeatedly executed, it continues running until something changes it. And sometimes, even when you turn on your computer, it automatically starts and runs in the background. That's one of the reasons hypnosis becomes such an area of interest to me. In hypnotherapy, we're often looking at patterns that we'd like to change, but just have not cracked the code yet on how to do it. Patterns that may have been repeating for years without a person consciously realizing how much influence they're having. And that's where things become interesting, because understanding a pattern and changing a pattern are not necessarily the same thing at all. Most people think consciously they choose their emotional reactions, but often we react before we've had time to consciously think of the things all the way from start to finish. You might feel anxious before you've had time to think. You might feel defensive before you fully understood what someone said. And you might feel embarrassed, outright embarrassed, frustrated, discouraged, or overwhelmed instantly. Instantly is that key word. You didn't have time to think about how you were going to feel. It was an automatic response. And that doesn't mean something is wrong with you. It just means you're human. The subconscious mind is constantly gathering information and making predictions based on past experiences. And sometimes those predictions are helpful. Sometimes they're outdated. But either way, they can influence how we feel and how we respond. This is one of the reasons people often find themselves reacting in ways they later don't fully understand. Their conscious mind catches up afterward. and tries to explain what already happened. Now, one of the most important concepts in hypnosis is understanding the difference between familiar and beneficial. From birth until roughly around age 8, the mind is absorbing information like a sponge. And during those early years, the subconscious is constantly learning. It learns what feels safe, what feels rewarding, what feels uncomfortable, and what should be avoided. Simple experiences begin creating associations. For example, one child at the age of 3 might be introduced to a new puppy in the house, with the puppy coming up, quietly and observing and friendly, where another 3-year-old child may be walking down the street with their parents, and all of a sudden, a dog rushes and runs up to the gate. A lot of us have experienced that, and the dog starts barking incessantly. And that being a first introduction to a dog of any type for that child, the child might associate dogs with fear until they learn otherwise. Another example, birthday cake and other sweets may become linked with pleasure and celebration. Certain vegetables become associated with less enjoyment. A chocolate cake or a vanilla cake at birthday time, not quite the same response as a bowl of steamed spinach for a young child. Over time, the subconscious logs these as positives and negatives and uses them to build internal rules, values, and expectations about life. In many ways, it's similar to software being programmed. Those early patterns can continue influencing thoughts, feelings, and behaviors for years unless they are consciously updated or changed, kind of like a software update. Some of these beliefs and assumptions and expectations we learned at a young age may no longer serve us as adults. They are simply what the subconscious mind logged as familiar. People can become familiar with stress, familiar with self-doubt, familiar with overthinking, familiar with avoiding difficult conversations, familiar with people-pleasing, familiar with procrastination. Over time, these patterns can start to feel normal. And when something feels normal, it can be surprisingly difficult to change. This is one reason positive change sometimes feels uncomfortable at first. Not because it's wrong, because it's just unfamiliar. The discomfort isn't always a sign that you're moving in the wrong direction. Sometimes it's simply a sign that you're doing something different. That reminds me of that phrase, change is uncomfortable. That kind of describes it in a little more detail. And understanding a pattern or a problem, if understanding a pattern or a problem were enough to change it, many people would have solved their problems years ago. Most people already know quite a bit about the issues they'd like to address, but often can't seem to create lasting change through willpower alone. They know they procrastinate, and they know they overthink. They know they stress eat. They know they avoid certain conversations. They know. And often, people start using personifying phrases, both in their minds and aloud, such as, "That's just the way I am." The question isn't always whether they understand the pattern. The question is whether the pattern has changed. And this is one of the reasons people seek out hypnosis, often as a last resort. The goal isn't simply to talk about a pattern. The goal is to change the pattern. And people are often surprised to learn that hypnosis isn't necessarily a long-term process. Depending on the individual and the issue, meaningful changes can be noticed after just 1 to 3 sessions. Now, that doesn't mean every issue is resolved immediately. It doesn't mean that everyone has the same experience. But meaningful change can happen faster than many people expect. One of the benefits people often experience through hypnosis is the ability to create automatic responses within the subconscious mind. Isn't that exciting? Maybe a different habit, a different expectation, a different emotional response, a different way to experience a situation, and as a result, finally, a different desired outcome. When the subconscious patterns begin to change, people often find themselves responding differently without having to fight themselves every step of the way. Instead of trying to force change through willpower alone, the change begins occurring at a deeper level. The funny thing is that many people wish for a magic wand that can instantly transform a negative habit into a positive one. And while hypnosis isn't literally magic, that kind of transformation can become a very real possibility. Understanding a pattern and changing a pattern are not always the same thing. Most people already know about their challenges than they realize. They know more about their challenges than they realize. The missing piece is not always more information. You can ruminate about something over and over and over again and think of it so many different ways and see so many different outcomes, almost like a choose your own adventure book. But it's a different experience each time and a different perspective and a different subconscious response. That's one of the reasons hypnosis continues to fascinate people, both practitioners and clients. The outcomes can be very positive. Because sometimes the things people need the most are not the explanations. The thing people need is an opportunity to create meaningful change and reprogram subconscious patterns intentionally. And when this happens through hypnosis, patterns that once felt automatic can be transformed or even eliminated altogether. People often are surprised by how quickly meaningful change can occur when the subconscious mind is working towards a different outcome. While every person and every issue is different, this is one of the reasons hypnosis continues to help so many people and improve habits, kind of like sleep, confidence, motivation, and other areas in their lives. It can be a very powerful therapeutic tool. Thank you for spending this time with me today. If you found value in today's conversation, please consider liking the video and subscribing to the channel. I share weekly content on hypnosis, personal growth, and practical ways to create meaningful change. Thank you for spending this time with me, and I'll see you in the next episode.